flexible packaging continues to be at the forefront of innovation in the industry. According to the recently released 2024 State of the U.S. Flexible Packaging Industry Report from the Flexible Packaging Association, the U.S. flexible packaging industry reached an estimated $42.9 billion in annual sales in 2023, which is a 3.3% growth from $41.5 billion in 2022. Their industry is forecasted to grow to $43.8 billion in the U.S. In last year, once all the tallies come in, and we expect it to climb to $47.3 billion by 2028. That's a compound annual growth rate of 2.0 from 2023 to 2028. It holds a significant portion of the U.S. packaging environment. It's about 20% of the total $210.8 billion U.S. packaging market, and it's the only category that currently surpasses flexible packaging is corrugated. Corrugated market obviously has seen significant increases with the dramatic rise of e-commerce over the years. But corrugated represents 22% of the U.S. packaging market. Food packaging for retail, institutional, and non-retail environments remains the largest end-use market for flexible packaging in the U.S., and that contributes about $22.2 billion in annual sales, or about 52% of the market. So food and beverage is huge. Medical and pharmaceutical sectors follow closely with $6.1 billion sales, and that's about a 14% market share. Other markets, including beverages, non-retail food, personal care, make up smaller portions of the market, each contributing a little bit less than 6%. So if we look at the substrates that are going into these flexible packaging formats, films and resins account for the largest input spend for converters. For those two categories, it accounts for about 70% of material purchases, with films at 51%, and resins at 22%. Within films, polyethylene continues to be the dominant material, with nearly all, 95% of converters responding to the Flexible Packaging Association survey, stating that they use polyethylene. Polyester displaced polypropylene as the second most widely used film in this year's survey, and that's used by 91% of respondents, compared to 73% who use polypropylene. Printing, bag, pouch making, laminating, and stand-up pouch innovation remains the most common process done by converters, with over 70% of converters reporting that they perform these processes. Other areas such as coating, extrusion, labeling help converters differentiate themselves from the competitors. Roll stock remains the dominant format produced by converters, accounting for 55% of dollar value, and 96% of converters produce this format. When looking at the types of products that are used in roll stock, the bags and pouches stand-up non-retort format is the leader in overall flexible packaging at about 50%, with the lay-flat non-retort pouches a close second at 46%. The overall trend toward making packaging that is reusable, compostable, or recyclable will continue, especially as more states continue to explore the implementation of EPR legislation. Sustainability and regulations will likely continue to drive the discussion for packaging, in particular flexible packaging. The need to drive design, collection, sortation, reprocessing, and markets will become more enhanced as EPR programs are implemented. While there is not a one-size-fits-all solution, the use of paper-based mono-materials with new barrier technologies will play an important role. So that dovetails into more of a broader discussion of EPR. Green Blue is one of the associations that is covering EPR on the flexible packaging and packaging in general side. And as you're all likely familiar, EPR is a policy approach that assigns producers responsibility for the end of life of products. This can include the financial responsibility and operational responsibility, through the amount of type may differ. Producers are required to provide funding and services that assist in managing covered products after the use phase. In short, it's a way to make our economy more of a circular economy when it comes to materials. It's putting the onus of responsibility on the brand owner in many cases. Sometimes it's the converter. It varies a little bit from state to state. We look at how things are being implemented. We have 5 states in the U.S. who have introduced packaging EPR in California, Oregon, Colorado, Minnesota, and Maine. 4 more states have packaging EPR legislation planned for 2025, and that's Washington, Tennessee, New York, and New Jersey. These are all in various stages of implementation. Most of the industry observers that I talk to have no interest in trying to bring this to a federal level. We don't see it as a one-size-fits-all solution. We can't conceivably come up with a federal framework at this point. So we're content to let the states try to sort this out bit by bit and try and find workable solutions that make sense for developing the industry into more of a truly circular economy. A lot of this has to do with establishing resources for recycling and sortation at the material handling reclamation level. But a lot of that is going to factor into which materials that producers then decide that they want to use. If you have to have a substrate that will actually truly be recycled and then have a use for that recycled material, then you're going to pay less into the system, much less. If your material doesn't have an end-of-life plan and it's just going to go to the landfill, then you're going to pay much higher. So this is going to factor considerably into future plans as we track this legislation moving forward. And it isn't just packaging. We're starting to see EPR legislation popping up all over the place. For batteries, federal EPR for batteries is possibly coming in early 2025. Much of this is up in the air currently, given the current administration changes that have been happening at a lot of departmental levels. But EPA had planned to host a series of focused conversations on topics related to the development of a national EPR framework for all batteries. EPA was looking to seek individual input from experts on elements that will reform the national battery EPR framework, including which types of batteries and products would be excluded, producer responsibilities and the organizational structure, federal, state, local government roles and responsibilities, goals, targets, and reporting requirements, collection and recycling infrastructure, including cost structures, collection models, transportation, domestic recycling initiatives, and as well as product design, including design for recycling. The goal here is to gather as much information as possible to create a framework that makes sense. And we know that some of the converters who come to Converters Expo and Converters Expo South are working in the energy space in some of the battery areas. So this is something to pay attention to as we move forward. We'll be interested to see if any of this actually happens this year within EPA, but we will be reporting back on it on packaging strategies as we learn more. There have been some state-based battery EPR legislation moves as well. On August 9th, the past year, the Portable and Medium Format Battery Stewardship Act was signed into law by Illinois. Will take effect in January 2026, and it does create a statewide program that requires battery producers to fund and manage the collection, transportation, and recycling of portable batteries and rechargeable batteries. So any converters working in energy should be paying close attention to this legislation so that they can be on the right side of it as we move forward. Extended producer responsibility is also factoring into construction materials, another area that's important to Converters Expo suppliers as well as the converters themselves. We're getting to a point where all of the materials that we create for construction need to have an end-of-life plan, and that includes things like, adhesive back foam boards and different materials that can go into the construction of residential and commercial buildings. This is something we're seeing over in the UK. So the EPR has extended to include converted materials used in building and construction. The United Kingdom has pledged to achieve a net zero carbon emissions by 2050. And the Environment Act 2021 contains the framework for a new and enhanced EPR regime for the UK, building on existing waste laws. Under the proposed EPR plans for construction materials, businesses placing certain types of products on the market will be required to pay the full costs associated with the product throughout its life cycle. Previously, the burden of such costs was borne wholly or in part by the local government. There are already waste frameworks in the UK in place governing packaging and batteries, among other products. So a system producer of responsibility for packaging has been in place since 1997, has helped dramatically increase the rate of recycling there. So this new framework is taking shape. It's requiring manufacturers, distributors, and importers of products to take responsibility for the end of life of their products. And the amount paid into the EPR programs will be weighted based on cost of handling the materials as waste or recyclable materials, as I mentioned earlier. Starting to extend into textiles and nonwovens as well. So EPR has potential impact for the nonwovens industry. So EPR for textiles is being introduced in the EU. EU has introduced a ban on sending post-consumer clothing, including some nonwoven materials, to the landfill or incinerator beginning this year. They're going to impose EPR legislation on brands and manufacturers to pay for collection and disposal. However, nonwovens already has a leg up because they already have very strong recycling programs in place for textile waste. Nonwovens manufacturers are already achieving almost 100% recycled content in many high-value products. Also, the advent of chemical recycling, which we'll start to see more of in the United States, will provide new opportunities for material reclamation. As EPR expands to materials like nonwovens, producers will need to pay attention to align with recycling and circular economy directives. So now a couple of examples to close things out, just to show some of the directions that the market is going. So eliminating labels is one of the areas. Labels are an important area for converters. A lot of converters working in label creation. And some of the CPG manufacturers are taking a harder look at how they are presenting their products, and sometimes without a label. In 2024, Coca-Cola Great Britain removed labels from Sprite and Sprite Zero. It was designed to simplify the recycling process, reduce the use of packaging materials. They replaced the label with an embossed logo on the front of pack with laser engraved product and nutritional information on the back. The company noted that while existing labels are fully recyclable, removing them simplifies the recycling process. It removes the need to separate them from the bottles during the recycling process and reduces the amount of packaging material used overall. This is part of a broader plan by Coca-Cola Company to reduce packaging waste and to control costs, perhaps. As noted by the VP of Franchise Operations for Coca-Cola Great Britain, labels contain valuable information for consumers, but with the help of technology, we can now trial other ways to share this information while reducing the amount of packaging that we use. Another innovation that I wanted to highlight today is the introduction of more paper beverage bottles. So when we look at paper material converting, we often don't think much about the liquid market, but paper holds great potential, not only for circular economy directives, but also for potential options for packaging beverages. Diageo, which makes Johnny Walker Scotch, Don Julio Tequila, and Guinness, they trialed a new paper-based packaging for Baileys. And it was the bottles designed for recycling in standard paper streams and does not require the consumer to separate the plastic liner from the paper bottle when disposing. The trial went through last year in May in Barcelona, and we'll be watching to see if Diageo uses this as an opportunity to expand more into this market. And finally, a big one. When we first started hearing about EPR, one of the stories that was coming across my desk was the challenge that California was giving to Capri Sun. They were imposing an unrealistic EPR demand for Capri Sun on a per pouch basis. So that, I believe, catalyzed some strong innovation within Kraft Heinz. In 2024, Kraft Heinz introduced a recyclable Capri Sun pouch in the United Kingdom. The recyclable pouch is made from monomaterial polypropylene, which allows the pouch to be recycled, whereas previously the laminated combination of different materials made the pouch non-recyclable. The new pouches offer a 25% reduction in packaging-related carbon emissions, and Capri Sun is aiming to transition its entire UK drinks range to fully recyclable packaging by mid-2025. In kind of a counter move, Kraft Heinz also introduced the first Capri Sun bottle in the United States, shifting away from the old packaging format, not completely, but another alternative that they're offering to the market. But this is definitely something that we'll be watching to see if it takes on a wider range of market opportunities across the world beyond the UK.